In a quiet Kenyan village nestled between the lush green highlands at the base of a majestic mountain, a young woman named Elizabeth sat in her modest kitchen, her hands trembling as she stared at the framed photo of her family. It had been 10 years since that fateful night, a night that had changed her life forever. Elizabeth had been away at school when it happened. Her family, a humble group of farmers, had welcomed her fiancé, Joe, into their home for a celebratory dinner. He was charming, polite, and well-spoken, the kind of man any family would be proud to call a son-in-law. But behind the charisma lay a dark secret. Unbeknownst to Elizabeth, Joe had become entangled in a dangerous criminal syndicate. He had borrowed money from ruthless loan sharks to fund his lavish lifestyle. That night, when he realized his debts were insurmountable, he decided to silence his problems by eliminating the only witnesses who knew about his financial woes, Elizabeth's family. Under the cover of darkness, Joe poisoned the evening stew, leaving Elizabeth's parents, siblings, and even her grandmother lifeless by morning. He staged the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong and disappeared, leaving Elizabeth to return to a nightmare. Devastated, Elizabeth sought answers. Joe was nowhere to be found, and the authorities chalked it up to a random act of violence. But Elizabeth knew better. Though her heart was shattered, her mind became focused on one thing: revenge. For the next 10 years, Elizabeth built a quiet life. She moved to Nairobi, took up a job as a nurse, and never spoke of the pain that haunted her. But behind the serene facade, she tracked Joe's every move. Her nursing job gave her access to people, records, and resources, and she used her charm to gather information discreetly. Joe, now a successful businessman, had remarried and was living in an upscale neighborhood in Karen. His public image was spotless, but Elizabeth knew the truth. She spent years studying his routines, his weaknesses, and his blind spots. One evening, Joe received an invitation to a charity gala in Nairobi, hosted by none other than Elizabeth herself under a pseudonym. She had spent years building a false identity as a philanthropist, ensuring that Joe would have no reason to suspect her. At the gala, Joe mingled with the crowd, completely unaware of Elizabeth's presence. She watched him from a distance, her heart pounding with the anticipation of justice. After the event, Joe received a handwritten note left on his car windshield. "We know what you did. Meet us at the old quarry tomorrow at midnight, or the truth comes out." Joe's face turned pale. He knew exactly what the note referred to. The old quarry was a desolate place where his syndicate had once conducted illegal activities. He had no choice but to go. At the quarry, Joe arrived under the cover of darkness. His heart raced as he called out, but no one responded. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Elizabeth, dressed in black, her face illuminated by the dim glow of the moon. "Do you recognize me, Joe?" she asked, her voice steady. Joe froze, his mind racing. Then it hit him. "Elizabeth, I thought you thought I moved on, that I forgot." Her voice cracked, but her resolve was unshaken. "You killed my family, Joe. You took everything from me." Joe tried to deny it, but Elizabeth held up a recorder. "I have the confession you made to one of your syndicate members. I've waited years for this moment." Joe lunged at her, but Elizabeth was prepared. She pulled a small vial from her pocket and flung its contents into his face, a powerful sedative. Joe collapsed to the ground, paralyzed but conscious. Elizabeth didn't kill Joe that night. Instead, she left him tied up at the quarry with the evidence of his crimes neatly packaged in an envelope addressed to the police. By dawn, the authorities arrived to arrest Joe, following an anonymous tip. As Joe's empire crumbled and he faced trial, Elizabeth finally felt a sense of peace. She had waited a decade to bring him to justice, and though it hadn't erased her pain, it had given her closure. Elizabeth returned to her village, where she planted a small garden in memory of her family. Each flower that bloomed reminded her that even in the darkest times, justice and hope could prevail.